Hello, everybody. This is Pasquale Majori here for the Buffalo Business Spotlight on WEBR Radio in Buffalo. I have the privilege of being joined by Scott Leffler today. We are going to talk about independent journalism and getting your own startup going. We had Matt Johnson on the program in the past, kind of talking about a similar situation. Scott is going to go a little bit more in depth about his current situation with All Western New York. Scott, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Pasquale, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So I'm going to start out early on. First and foremost, early media influences and why you decided to get into media.
So I decided I wanted to get into journalism largely due to the Gulf War, 1991. The world was chaos, and I saw these people on the nightly news, and they were managing the chaos and reporting back to us. And I just thought that is such a noble, and I'm not going to lie, cool profession. Bombs going off and dudes just standing there reporting the news. And I thought, yeah, I want to do that. So I decided to go to school for journalism.
I totally understand. I was in 7th grade during the Gulf War, and my mother would let me stay home from time to time to watch the coverage. I was on CNN all day before you could say you could watch CNN all day. Before, you get dirty looks from other people and things like that. So I totally get that. Who are some of your early influences from media here in Western New York, more specifically?
Oh, Western New York. Irv Weinstein. Mike Randall. Love Mike Randall. Still love Mike Randall. Really, the whole old crew at Channel 7. We used to watch news at 5, and then we would watch People's Court at 5:30, and then we would watch another local news at 6, and then we would watch the world news at 6:30. So we had that, growing up every day. I had an hour and a half block of news, and it really formed, my opinion of what I thought journalism should be. Because both, locally and on, Channel 7, Peter Jennings, it was just, I thought it was top notch.
And at that time, too, identifiable personalities, if you were old enough to drink, you'd want to sit down and have a beer with them, hear their perspective on the world?
I wasn't nearly old enough to drink, so I didn't even consider that part of it.
Maybe a milkshake?
Sure, why not? But I mean, so I graduated high school at 17. So, leading up to there, I'm 15, 16, I'm old enough to drink at home, and did on occasion. But yeah, the concept of having a beer with someone was not something that I really developed until much later in life. But pick their brain, sure. Get to know them, sure. And I've been super lucky that, I have gotten to know a lot of these people, throughout the years. As well as anyone, I'm sure, Western New York media is very, I say this with all due respect, incestuous. People go from 2 to 4 to 7 to the Gazette to the Buffalo News to BEN. People just jump around. Most people that have been in media for, 20 years have met most of the other people in media. And we are blessed to have a bunch of really good people. Some not as good, but a bunch of really good ones. And I'm not going to tell you who I don't like, but
No, we can do that when we hit the stop button. A lot of media people I've found to have been very accessible, very helpful. We talked about Bob Kaczynski off the air. Bob took some time to sit down with me at the Eastern Hills Mall to talk about his early Buffalo wrestling memories, and I really appreciate that. And a few other people have been very generous with their time as well. On the radio side, early influences?
Paul Harvey. Rush Limbaugh, believe it or not. When I was in college, I worked at a Greek restaurant. The owners were staunch Republicans. And once a month, they would have the local Republican Party come to the restaurant and watch the Rush Limbaugh show. And even though we are, diametrically opposed politically, the dude knew what he was doing. He was a great entertainer. He could sell water and, or to ask, I don't know. You know what I'm trying to say?
I got you.
He had his stuff together, and I think that listening to him was like, all right, that's a way to do it. And when I was on radio, I tried to do it that way. Failed miserably. I didn't fail at radio, but I failed at being Rush Limbaugh for sure.
Any more like local radio influences that you listen to on a regular basis growing up?
No, actually, believe it or not, I listened to CFNY almost exclusively.
See, I was a huge radio nerd growing up. All my friends were listening to Kiss 98.5, and I was listening to Tom Bowerly, Doug Young on the sports side, Chuck Dickerson, JR on GR, all those guys. So radio was a huge influence for me, and that's how I spent a lot of my time. For me, if I was at home on a Saturday afternoon playing with my G.I. Joes and I heard that Doug Young was on the air, Doug Young would be the background noise for my childhood.
Doug and I worked together at LVL for a while. He was... interesting. JR was great. Loved Art Wanderer.
How could I leave Art out? Art was my guy. Yes.
You know, I did used to listen, but I mean, that's in my 20s, you know. When I come back to Western New York, I used to listen to Art Wanderer anytime I was in my car and he was on. That's what I had on.
Another polarizing character. You either loved Art or you hated him.
Yeah, and I never understood people that hated it. Like it didn't make any sense to me, but yeah.
So you got out of college, came back here to Western New York. What was your first job in media here in Western New York, or even internship?
So graduated college in 96. Worked at a newspaper in Ohio. Came back here in 99. And really I just wanted a job. So I got hired at the Lockport Journal in their circulation department, actually. And just because I knew somebody in the circulation department, didn't specifically do it to get my foot in the door, but I had been there maybe a month at most and was talking to the managing editor and mentioned that I had gone to school for journalism. He said, "What are you doing in circulation? We got an opening here." So I ended up taking the city reporter's position, which is a pretty, prominent position at a newspaper. Took over for Dennis Keefe because he retired or moved on to something else at the time. So Lockport Journal, city reporter, the year 2000, maybe 2001. That had to have been 2000. And I was there until 2002. Before I went to LVL, and then I came back, and then I've done other things since. But we'll get into that.
Yeah. Any stories that you covered while you were at the paper that you'll never forget covering?
My favorite story that I ever covered at the paper was there had been a rumor that people were squatting in this apartment complex in Lockport, and the city building inspector assured me it was not true. And all right, whatever. It was just one of those, stories. So he's like, "You know what? Meet me there. I'll show you." So we show up. He unlocks the door. People scurry. I think that was probably my favorite story ever. Did a lot of politics stuff. Enjoyed a lot of politics stuff. But that was a story that definitely stuck with me.
Now you transitioned over to WLVL radio. What were you looking to do there? Was it more news-based, or were you looking to do general conversation when it came to talk radio?
So when I was at the Union Sun, I was on the editorial board, the group that decides what position the newspaper takes. I was almost always in the minority. But it was a fun gig. One of the other people on the board was Clip Smith. And at the time, Clip had left BEN, and Dick Green at WLVL was looking to hire him. And unfortunately, Clip was up in his years, and there are stairs to get into WLVL, and he couldn't navigate the stairs. So he had asked Dick if he could build him a ramp. Well, Dick Green, great guy, but notoriously cheap, said, "No, we can't do that." So Dick said, "I'm not going to give you the job. Can you recommend someone else?" And for some reason, Clip recommended me. So I started as a talk show host in the 11 o'clock hour, 11 to 12, Monday through Friday. And it was just a part-time gig. That was all I did, was just that one, I think he paid me $20 an hour or something stupid like that. just enough to say that he paid me. And it was mostly politics with some current events and just, I wanted to emulate Rush to a certain degree, but with a less overtly political and more dry sarcasm bent. Because that's kind of my take on life. And so started working there and had a great time. Got to meet some phenomenal people. So I'm still working at the newspaper and at the radio station, which was unheard of. They're, for all accounts, competitors, and would frequently talk trash about one another. And here's me, trying to bridge the gap. It was a fun time.
How did the newspaper feel about you working in the radio station?
Well, I approached them and I said, look, I got this opportunity and this is going to sound crazy, but I think I can do this and I think I can make it a win-win-win. And they thought about it and they said, yeah, go ahead. Frankly, looking back on it, 20 years later, I'm shocked, but it worked out pretty well. Then it really ended up working out well because the following year, the newspaper cut a bunch of staff, self included.
Is that when everything kind of came together with all the local Niagara County newspapers and there was more synergy and crossover?
Yes, it was shortly after that, actually. So they got everything together. They did the synergy and the crossover. All the newspapers were being written in their own respective places, the Gazette, the Union Sun, the Tonawanda News. But all the pages were being designed in Tonawanda. The paper was being printed in Tonawanda. So Tonawanda became the hub. And I had just gotten promoted from city reporter to page designer, which might not sound like a promotion, but it was more money. And I had a little more say of what went into the paper. So I had just gotten promoted maybe a month or two prior to them going, we don't need all these page designers. So if I had stayed at City Reporter, I might have kept working there longer, but I didn't. It was okay. I ended up going back to work there later, so we must have ended it on somewhat decent terms.
Where was your heart at that point? Were you more on the newspaper side or the radio side?
Oh, newspaper side.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. As much as I enjoyed the radio, I never felt like, how do I put this? I didn't always feel able to communicate effectively with my audience. I felt comfortable that when I wrote in the newspaper, the audience that I was writing for would understand what I was saying. And when I was on the radio, I felt like I had to dumb myself down to a degree. And I didn't like it. I enjoyed the job, but it wasn't journalism. And I like journalism.
How were the callers to the show? Did they kind of
Crazy.
Influence your decisions?
They were crazy. Some of
In a good way or a bad way?
Both. Some of the callers were great. I made some lifelong friends from some of those callers. A buddy of mine named Lou Ricciuti. You might have heard of him. Nuclear Lou is what he's known as. Huge environmental proponent. Great guy. Crazy, but great guy. And then there were other callers, and sadly, many of them are deceased now. They would just call in and scream and rant, and they lived in a world that I was unfamiliar with. I'm not sure that the world that they lived in ever really existed, but it sure did in their minds.
Sometimes you feel like, having been a call screener, having done talk radio for a while, sometimes you feel that you are their only outlet, and you kind of have to give them, as long as you don't give them too much, I think you're safe. But some of these people are, I guess, off the wall. I'm not afraid to say, but yeah, that if that's the only voice, their only outlet, and you're their person they want to talk to, it's a challenging situation sometimes.
Call screener, what's that?
Oh, I forgot. Yeah,
we had live bombs. Yeah, we just picked up the phone and whoever was there was there. Which resulted in a few undesirable situations. But It always made it interesting. Never knew who was on the other side of the phone.
If you went to work that morning, you didn't know what you wanted to talk about, was there a subject you can put out there where the phone lines would light up?
Yeah. So if there was something that I wanted to talk about, something that had happened the previous day or even the previous week or was going to happen, I'd be like, all right, so today we're going to talk about this. And when I first started the show, they fought me on that. They wanted to talk about whatever they wanted to talk about, whenever they wanted to talk about it. And I was like, nope, today we're going to talk about the Lockport School Board. But on days when either nothing struck my fancy or frankly I was being lazy, I would just say, all right, open phone lines. What are we talking about today? And they pretty much never failed to fill up an hour. And then later 2, but starting at an hour.
I mean, did you keep it light and fluffy or were you always like on a serious?
It depended. I like light and fluffy, but it got contentious at times. It was serious at times. I fought battles with certain politicians, won some, lost some, but little of this, little of that.
And how was WLVL viewed at that point? Kind of just local. We're going to cover all the local issues. Politicians would get involved.
In Lockport, WLVL is a huge deal. Once you get outside of 14094, forget it. Most people on this side of the county don't even know what it is. But man, I was famous in Lockport.
That's not a bad thing.
My kids would always refer to me as Lockport famous, which it sounded like a bad thing to me.
No, that's not a bad thing. I don't having that, like those local tie-ins is great. So once we got past the WLVL and the Lockport newspaper, what was the next step in the journey?
So 2009, I got divorced and the radio station broke up with me all at the same time. They may have been related. I may have not been as good of an employee as I could have been due to other circumstances. And in all honesty, the owner of the radio station put up with my shenanigans for a lot longer than he should have.
Were you still just doing the hour per day?
No. So at this point, I'm full time. I'm doing an hour at WLVL. I'm doing an hour at WECK, and I'm the production director for WLVL. Frank Miller at the time was production director at ACK. So it was a full-time gig. But like I said, I didn't have my best foot forward. And the owner called me into his office and said, yeah, we got to go in a different direction. So I said, okay. So I was unemployed for a while. And when I was at WLVL, I had found this service, and I don't remember the name of the service, but it was local small radio stations that only had one person doing their commercials for the most part, and they would trade. So like a production director in Iowa would say, hey man, I'll do a 30-second spot for you if you do one for me, just so there was a little more variety on the radio. So when I left LVL, I decided I can still do that. I just got to charge them. And I charged, $10 for a commercial for a 30-second spot, with background music and all that fun stuff. I thought I'd do better than I did, but I made a little bit of money. I got on Fiverr, started doing it there. And then eventually I ended up back at the newspaper. So I'm back at the Union Sun for a couple more years. And so when I did that, I stopped doing the freelance stuff. So I'm back at the Union Sun and Journal as the night city editor, which is a step up from where I was before. For, I want to say 3 years. And then I left there and started my own thing with my then girlfriend. We started a thing called East Niagara Post, which was just online news focusing on Eastern Niagara County, Lockport, Pendleton, Starpoint, Barker, pretty much everything east of Wheatfield. So we did that for a couple years. And then that relationship ended horribly. And the website did as well. And so all this time, I've still got my baby that I started in 2006, All Western New York Radio, is still plugging along. So I'm like, I've already got an online radio station. Why not just add an online news component to it? So 2016, I started All Western New York News, just focusing on local news. And whereas East Niagara Post was very micro, just a very small area. Honestly, we focused almost exclusively on a neighborhood in Lockport, just because there was so much there. All Western New York News, I thought I could go macro. And so I formed some partnerships with some other news agencies, and I'm like, hey, you do news in Cheektowaga. I want to do news everywhere. Can I borrow some of your news once in a while and send you some readers from other things? So my thought was to develop a news consortium with different small websites like East Niagara Post, for example.
Almost like a B newspaper, like the B would kind of similar situation, right? You have a B here, a B there, a B everywhere.
Yes, kind of. But everyone had their own, whereas B owned all the Bs. I didn't want to own everybody. I just wanted us to all work together.
Gotcha.
While I made profits.
Sure.
So I had a really good plan. Sometimes plans don't come together. So in the 8 years since then, All Western New York News has largely been an expensive hobby. But I still maintain it.
So are you your own salesperson then too when it comes to getting
yes,
advertisers?
Yes, and I'm horrible at it. The worst.
The hardest part of it. That's the hardest part of it, though.
I really am the worst. We were talking about people that can sell, sand in the desert or whatever. I am the opposite. Like I could go, Elon Musk could be literally dying of thirst in the Sahara, and I would somehow not be able to sell him a glass of water.
Why do you feel that that's the case?
I have no idea. And it's not just because Elon Musk is crazy, but he is. But no, it's just I've never been able, and it's a thing I believe in. I just can't seem to translate that into other people's heads. See,
when you talk about expensive hobbies, like I do independent wrestling events, and I have the same problem as you have, but I feel it's just because I'm too lazy to go ask people for money. That's my
I don't know that I'm too lazy to ask people for money. I fear maybe I come off as desperate. I don't know. And I'm really not desperate because, like I said, I keep doing it. I make money elsewhere and continue to fund this other idiotic thing that costs me, time and resources. But, we're coming up on 20 years. I don't want to quit now.
You have longevity. You go to your website. It's not like you're looking at an Angel Fire website. Everything looks professional. Everything looks nice and tidy. I would believe it'd be marketable. I checked out your YouTube page. Same with that. I know it's, post 2020, it's harder to go out there and ask that person for $150, $200 because you don't know what they're going through with their own business. But I feel like having that outlet is great too, and especially having the local connection. I could go into like a whole tangent and a whole rant about what we're dealing with in the media over the last 4 years, but probably not going to do that because I want to remain friends with you.
Understood.
But what is the appeal of like an independent media source like you have as opposed to 247 and whatever channel Spectrum News is?
So 247 Spectrum, the Buffalo News, the Gazette, the other local newspapers are great at what they do. Some better than others. But one of the things that has frustrated me specifically about the local news stations is, I'm on Facebook. Unfortunately, everybody's on Facebook. You can't seem to live your life without being on Facebook, although I really wish I could. But I'm scrolling through my Facebook feed and there's something from X channel. Doesn't matter, 247. They all do it. It's a story about something that happened in Wisconsin. And I'm like, why? So All Western New York has never done that. You know, if we have a story, it is about Western New York or somehow or another pertains to Western New York. You know, for example, I might do a political story that's a federal story, but how will this impact the Buffalo region? Whereas I feel that and unfortunately, it works for them. I feel that a lot of the local media just does clickbait on, you know, not necessarily clickbait, that's the wrong word, engagement farming. And I've thought about it because, like I said, it works for them. I could probably make money if I did it, but it's not journalism. It's not what I want to do.
Right.
I'd rather not make money than not do what I want to do.
I'm not the kind of person that'll go out of my way to kind of watch television news, but when I'm at the gym in the morning doing cardio, insert joke there, and I see the crawl along the bottom of the screen, I'm like, maybe you guys could have taken the day off today.
Yeah. Especially this time of year. You know, this week between Christmas and New Year's is just the worst week for. I'm doing the news on All Western New York today, and I'm just trying to find something to publish, and it's like nothing is because you know so many government employees are off, so there's not much news coming out of government. The schools are off, so there's not news coming out of the schools. So I got DWI reports, and sadly, in my opinion, that's my number one traffic farm. You know, I can spend hours writing a story about, you know, something of depth, something of magnitude, something of what I consider great import, and 60 people will read it. I cut and paste a press release from New York State Police about somebody on Grand Island who got a DWI. Nothing even spectacular. They didn't drive into a building. They didn't run over a horse. They just got pulled over and blew a .17. 2,000 people. And I'm like, man, I don't know. Sometimes I'm getting depressed now. Sometimes it is very frustrating because people complain about, people complain about the news, but really they're getting the news they want.
So what does an average day look like for you?
An average day for me. I wake up around noon, 1 o'clock, make myself some coffee, come to the office, putz around a little bit, drink some more coffee, see what my clients need. I do commercial narration. That's my main gig. And usually I'll check before I even come to the office what that looks like. But I'll come to the office, record a few things for a few clients. Then I'll look into the news, update the website a little bit. Maybe look into some events, update the events website. All Western New York has several different components, and one of them is a calendar. And sometimes the calendar takes a lot of my time. But so, little bit of narration, little bit of news, and then back to narration for the rest of the day. I will work until midnight, sometimes as late as 4. Go home, go to sleep, start it all over again.
And how quick, if there's a breaking news story, are you able to get it up on the website and turn it over?
So it really depends on where I am. If I'm here at the office, minutes.
So if a drone flies by, you're right on it.
Oh yeah. The drones. I don't get the drone thing.
I don't either.
Are we Facebook friends?
Yes, we are.
You see, I posted something about the drones last week.
I feel like it's something where you can't joke around about it, though, because some people are taking it way too seriously.
And I think that's why we should joke around about it.
Exactly. Thank you. Like politics and religion, joking is good.
Yeah. So yeah, so I mean, if news breaks, I try to fix it as soon as possible. But sometimes I'm at Walmart and I'm in line behind 40 people, and I'm like, well, Brian Higgins being appointed as Shea's president, which everybody knew was going to happen for the last year, being made official is just going to have to wait until I get to the office later tonight.
What about Byron Brown being a great pitch man now for Batavia Downs? So much energy.
So much
energy.
I used to have Byron on as a guest when I was at WECK. I wasn't a fan. Was never really a fan of his as mayor either. But, I've always tried to treat him fairly in terms of news. But I really don't understand how that man kept getting reelected.
Interesting individual for sure. Are you a big sports guy?
Love hockey. I'm a Bills fan, largely because they're doing well. I wouldn't call myself a bandwagon fan, but I did abandon them for a while when they abandoned me. I feel that not supporting a team that's not trying doesn't make you a bandwagon fan. It just makes you a reasonable human being. Spending thousands of dollars to go watch a team pretend to try to win a football game doesn't make any sense to me. But go Bills. More of a hockey fan though, so this year's been a little painful.
Yeah, I'm not a big hockey guy. I'm more of a Bills guy, a baseball guy, but I can understand, now maybe the next couple weeks you'll be focused on
without a doubt,
the playoff hunt.
Yeah, without a doubt. And so this year actually, at the beginning of the football season, I had it in my head that we weren't going to have a good year. So I approached a friend of mine who used to be a photographer for local newspapers. And I said, you know what? I think we need to follow soccer. So let's each pick a Premier League team and we'll follow some soccer. So just this year, I've started following Arsenal in the Premier League, mainly because I was afraid the Bills were going to suck and I wanted something to support. And then the Bills have been doing great. Arsenal has also been doing great, by the way. But I'm blown away by how well the Bills have done. Pleasantly surprised. So
I want to thank you so much for your time here, Scott. I want you to get back to work today, but one quick question before we get out. A person is frustrated with watching the same thing over and over on television news. They're sick of hearing the same thing over and over on regular radio. Why should somebody go to All Western New York and check out your news site?
Because first and foremost, it is all Western New York. No, nothing else. Only things pertaining to Western New York. Secondly, we're going to have things that they didn't have. They'll probably have things that we didn't have, and that's fine. They've got, a staff, and I've got myself mostly. And Joe Kent does a show on All Western New York Radio. But for the most part, it's me. That said, sometimes I pick up some things that you might not see elsewhere, and it's free. So take a minute, come say hi.
And if people have a story they want to contribute, how is the best way to do that?
So on our website, there are a number of links for email addresses. And I really don't know I think it's news@allwesternnewyorknews.com, or it might be news@allwestern. I have so many different domain names and so I don't know what's on the website, but go to the website, click the link, and shoot us an email and let us know. And, so if you've got something, and this happens, sometimes people will be like, hey, I've got this situation. Can you help me with it? A few months ago, somebody got a hold of me with something similar. They had a government abuse of power sort of police thing. And I said, you know what? I would be happy to write this story. But honestly, you might get more play if you go talk to somebody who's, focuses on this. And so I didn't turn down the story so much as I sent them to someone who I thought could help.
Sure.
But I don't remember where I was going with this.
Getting involved in contributing.
So if you have a story that you want, shoot me an email. We also do letters to the editor. And if you have a question about a story, shoot me an email.
Awesome. Any other thing you want to promote before we get out of here?
Actually, you know what? I almost forgot this completely. So the All Western New York Radio for the past 10 years or so, has done an All Western New York Awards, where we, give awards for the best local rock band, the best local jazz band, the best local blues band, the best music bar, the best karaoke, the best etc. And the month of January, I will be formulating a plot, and we will start nominations February 1st, and we will start voting March 1st, and we will announce winners April 1st, which will be All Western New York Radio's 19th birthday.
Well, that's very exciting.
Yeah, I like it.
Yes. Well, thank you again, Scott, for sitting down with me. I appreciate your time. And
Thank you.
Everybody make sure you check out All Western New York, and I will post the links for everything in the description of this program.
Thank you, sir.